Hi, my name is Oliver Hartman. I use he, they pronouns, and for our archaeological theory project, we are focusing on the evolution of modern alphabet letters. And if my group members would like to introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm also Oliver, Oliver Brookings, he, him. I'm studying linguistics primarily.
Hi, I'm Zulma. I use she, her, and I am an anthropology student, but I am definitely interested in linguistics and archaeology.
I should probably pop in. I'm also an anthropology student, and I'm particularly interested in cultural anthropology, aka ethnology.
Yes, me too.
We love good old cultural anthropology. All
Yes,
right,
we do.
so who would like to start?
I can get into a little bit of what context and background will be looking like. I think if you just go along with our presentation, you can kind of see how, for me personally, I know I did join this group, so I wasn't the original one to come up with the idea, but I definitely did see, like, as kind of doing more research, being interested in how these like language features, as you know, the alphabet is a major source of our modern language, and just seeing it as a source of anthropological research, like going into just the subfield of archaeology, you can see like hieroglyphics and a lot of inscriptions. That's pretty important, in my opinion, and just kind of for me personally, I really like to find the source, the origin, whether that be like human origins or our source of language, because we do have really complex language. So kind of finding out what drove us to kind of develop what we see in modern day as, our social systems or language systems. And we're gonna be comparing pretty much the Proto-Canaanite, Canaanite. I don't remember how exactly to pronounce it. Alphabetic
Canaanite.
Canaanite, yes, to the modern Latin alphabet. So for me personally, I kind of decided on looking at the letters A, B, C, D, and I. And the reason why I wanted to look for that because A is kind of, the beginning of most alphabets and definitely a big character in how we structure our alphabets. And it also was one of the major ones, looking back at the Proto-Canaanite alphabet. There are a lot of different ways of picturing it, especially, I mean, the reconstructed name would be Alp or Ox. So that's kind of what it was discussed as, but it typically does like involve, the a version of the A that we see in a lot of our written language. It looks pretty similar, whether that be like with the two lines kind of forming a V shape, different orientations, but pretty much kind of the same. And so for me personally, I just thought like I should start off with that. And it kind of evolved and it did end up making it into our modern alphabet. And this includes like, early Greek or Greek, Latin, even in hieroglyphics. Modern Hebrew is also one of the big ones that still has it as well. And just, this is the beginning. So it's pretty un, I wouldn't say unproblematic, but kind of not debatable whether or not it was an important letter or not. So, that did make it into our modern one. And then going into the letter B, now this one's a little bit more interesting because like I said, it does appear in both, you know, the Phoenicia or Greek, Arabia, areas, and it was something that was a little bit different and the pronunciation was different. So, for example, this one it kind of went baked. I don't know how to pronounce it either, but it kind of meant house, which is pretty interesting because you don't normally associate that kind of letter, not with like the letter A, where it symbolizes something. Its restructured name is literally starting with that letter, and this one's just house, and house is pretty interesting. This is something that they developed to look into that they were interested in finding um, letters to represent things in their culture, everything they see around them in their environment. Um, so I really did love that. And then going into also the letter C. So C is a little bit more, um, I'm not sure what the word would be, but it's a little bit harder to kind of analyze it or find it because not many, for some reason, not many uh, regions, or I don't know what the word is, like not a lot of scholars for some reason, they don't take an interest in the letter C.
Poor C.
So yes. So I couldn't find too much on it, but I do know that it definitely did have to have some form of transcription into our modern Latin alphabet, because I mean, it's in there. And in our modern English alphabet as well. So I couldn't find too much on that, but I will try to circle back on it a little bit later on. And looking into the letter D this time, actually, I really do love the letter D. I mean, it's kind of one of the easiest recognizable ones in modern Latin and Greek. So, this one was dag, or fish, as its reconstructed name, which I kind of think personally the inscription that they use for it, it does look like a fish. Like this one has a very, very cute, I'm not sure if you can see it on our presentation, but it's got a very, very cute little hieroglyphic of a fish. And it did make it in, of course, and that's something that I thought was really interesting to look at, thinking back to how we visualize our alphabet, how we visualize these characters into something that we can verbally express. And then looking into the letter, I believe it was E. Let's see. So for E, this one's a little bit interesting as well because you don't actually uh, get it exactly the same in English or in Latin. This one, rather than what it looks like as E in um, other languages like Russian or Bulgarian, it does look like an E, but once you get into Latin, it kind of goes yi, so it starts with a Y instead of what we traditionally see as an E. And that kind of um, shows us how transcriptions do differ, because the thing is, like, if we have a letter that looks this way, a specific way, it can be interpreted a different way in a different language. And I mean, when we look at just from the hieroglyphics, the letter E is kind of a little symbol. I'm not sure to try. It's like a little symbol of like a man, and it does look interpreted different ways because you can really take from it that it looks like an E, but also a Y. And let's get into the letter I. So the letter I, now me personally, I really always wanted to do this one as well, along with how I mentioned A was one of my biggest interests. I was because I mean I is a huge part of what we see in modern American alphabets, or modern English alphabet, sorry. And I mean, I is like the letter that arguably is most important in most of these, because we have a super, super strong sense of individualism. And I mean, even just from being an alphabet letter, I wanted to see how I became the I personal, subjective, thinking I represents me, I represents what I want, what not what they want, but what I want, me as an individual. And so the thing is with I, from Proto-Canaanite, it does look as it should. And it pretty much looks the same. Like whenever you go across all others and it's a restructured name, it literally looks as it should. And it did make it into um, our alphabet. And I just think that I is a big part of how we should kind of look into archaeology, especially when we're looking at how cultural transforms work. How do these kind of concepts transfer into our, you know, modern Latin alphabet, thinking about how we have conceptualization of the individual as a self, and you can see that in the inscription or whatever, but it definitely does change the kind of the route that you go about when you're studying these kinds of linguistic, evidence in archaeology, thinking about how the simple, orientation of each letter as a meaning, being that this letter represents myself or this letter represents someone else, is majorly important because we are directly trying to figure out who are they talking about in these scriptures, who is this inscription following, and so and such. So I'm not sure if we want to shift gears and have somebody briefly take over for a little bit.
I can take over now with JKLMNOP because I have my notes
Oh,
pulled
you
up
have
now.
detailed notes.
Mhm.
I'm honored, but like this is bare minimum for me, admittedly. So I'm gonna start with the letter J. With most of my letters, I did end up just immediately looking for where it began and how it was introduced. So we'll start with J. Can I yeah, I can do this. So the letter J began as like a swash, which I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but it was a typographical embellishment for the already existing letter I, which we previously went over. And there was an introduction of lowercase letters to the Roman numeric system, and J was already commonly used to denote the conclusion of a series of ones, as in XIIJ for the number 13, and so forth, because we all know Roman numerals goes on for fucking ever. Probably shouldn't be cursing during this, should I? Sorry, Professor. Um, but John Giorgio Trissino, I hope I pronounced that right, who lived between 1478 and 1550, he was the first to explicitly distinguish I and J as representing separate sounds and separate letters. And I have no idea how to pronounce this. This is a nightmare
Solo
to
del
pronounce.
persino del terre nuovamente aggiunte nella lingua italiana, I believe. Do not check me
A
on that.
great sense of
That's
pronunciation.
probably wrong.
That's better than I was gonna do. Oh my goodness.
Yes, I've been pleasantly surprised about how much you can pronounce these correctly. I personally cannot.
I wasn't even
Like,
gonna
uh,
try.
linguistics are like that.
We love linguistics. But that translates to Gersino's epistle about the letters recently added in the Italian language of 1524, which is a really long title. You'd think he'd give
Oh,
us a little bit of a break.
there's this golden era of like titles of books and officially published things needed to be crazy long because this is like it wasn't just a title, it was also like the description of the back of the book of what it was about. So you'd get one that would be like 3 sentences long.
I mean, that makes sense because
That's not bad. We're still seeing that like nowadays, thinking about like there are some crazy titles out there. They're like um I don't know, thinking about like anime and stuff. That time I
oh
reincarnated
yeah.
as a slime, or like that time I reincarnated as a vending machine.
I think
Yeah.
like especially now we're trying to draw in attention with book titles, but like wow.
Oh, if you go back and you read like accounts of the first American settlers, like the names of what they write will, I mean, it's just everything that happens basically.
We should do
We
a
might as well
second
just have the
podcast on
title of
that.
the book. We could.
That would be fun. But a little fun fact about the letter J. So we all probably know the Bible, which is a very important cultural element of Christians. But Jesus' name in Hebrew, this was before they had the letter J. So it was Yeshua, I believe, which does translate into English as Joshua. And Z may be the last letter in the inside the modern day alphabet, but the last letter that was actually added to our alphabet was this letter J. So Z, we've had Z for a while. J came in a little bit later. And in the Roman alphabet, the English alphabet's father, J wasn't a letter, it was just a fancier way of writing the letter I. Once again, a swash.
I want
So
to also add in, because I forgot to tell you this, but many languages do not have J as a letter. There is a DZH sound or DZ sound, which is J, which is close enough. So one
yeah.
of the only alphabets in the world that has J, actually.
Wow, we really wanted to be special. We really, really did. But moving on to the letter K. The letter K comes from the Greek letter K, kappa, which was taken from the Semitic kaf, the symbol for an open hand. And the letter K is a really old letter, as it came from the Egyptian hieroglyphics, which you can also see once again here. Where is it? It's going to be around here. You can see kappa, cap palm, and the Semitic language. Oh, we already did that. In those times, the letter faced the other way. When the Greeks adopted it in 800 BC, it became kappa and flipped to the right. So we could probably see that here, just along here. So there's one right there and one right there. And I don't even know if they can see my mouse, but I hope so. And moving on to the letter L, ancestors of the letter L were the Semitic lamed, which may derive from an earlier symbol representing an ox goad, and the Greek lambda. And there we have that lovely little. I love that one. That one looks so pretty. But the form appearing on the Moabite stone was rounded, and other Greek forms were found in early inscriptions from Attica and Corinth. And it's the 12th letter of the Roman alphabet as used for English, and it originated in the Phoenician letter lamed once again. And sorry, a lot of my notes are just repeating themselves because I kept finding the same stuff over and over again. That's my bad. But the letter M, what was that?
I was going to say, that's how you know your information is reliable. You keep getting the same thing.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I'll use that in the future. But the letter M is derived from the Phoenician mem via the Greek mu, which I love saying mu. I hated statistics and all math, but mu is one of my favorites. The Semitic mem is most likely derived from a Proto-Sinaitic. I'm not going to even try anymore. Thank you, though. Bronze Age adoption of the water ideogram in Egyptian writing, which we can see here. Very fun little zigzag line. And the letter M came into existence roughly around in 1800 BC. The Semites reduced the lines to 3 waves, and the Phoenicians then removed one more wave. Then in 800 BC, the peaks were turned into zigzags and flipped horizontally to form the letter M we know today. And then my lovely little personal note here were little squigglies, which, fun little word. And in Washoe, the lowercase letter M represents a typical M sound, while uppercase letter M represents a voiceless M sound, which I actually couldn't find a lot of more elaboration on that, but that was a fun little fact. And my fun fact for the letter M is James Bond's code name is M. Amazing. So simple. We'd love to see it. And then the letter N, its earlier form was always closely associated with water, just like M as well. When the sign was used by the Phoenicians more than 3,000 years ago, it was called nun. What we see as nun, but it was pronounced noon, which also meant fish. So these two letters always kind of went hand in hand, I feel like. And before the Phoenicians, the Egyptian hieroglyphic for the N sound was a wavy line representing water as well, which we've also got it somewhere similar in here. So this one's more water, this one's more snake. And around 1000 BC, only one ripple appeared, and the Greeks named it Nu. And my last two letters, we barely have anything. I'm so sorry, O and P. I'm doing our letter wrong, Oliver. Like, he should have more, but he has so little.
Oh,
Um,
O showed up and everyone went, yeah, that's the shape that should have, and then it didn't change.
yeah, it's like a beautiful, it's perfect, it's amazing. Zulma, you're our honorary third Oliver from this group. It's amazing.
Yes, yes.
The letter O first appears in the ancient Semitic languages of about 1000 BC as the fricative consonant ein, or what I see as ein, which is I. And sometime later, the Greeks morphed it into a vowel, and from there it slid seamlessly into the Roman alphabet, and from there the English alphabet. And we haven't changed him. He has stayed exactly the same because he is perfect. And the letter P, which is the 16th letter of the Roman alphabet, it originated in the Phoenician symbol pe, which was adopted by the Greeks as pi, which, once again, hate math. Please, dear God. And an earlier form of which the Romans adopted as P. I feel bad for P, but I also like it's P. What else are you gonna do? And that's my little bit. If we would like to move on to Oliver.
Okay. I unfortunately am not as well prepared note wise. I just read everything and hoped I remembered it, but I think I will. So I'm starting off with Q, which incidentally has always been one of my favorite letters. I can't really put in words why, but I just like the shape. This goes back to hola, which is the sign for a needle. And I mean, if you look at the head of a needle, yeah,
Yeah.
that's a close enough shape. It then sort of evolved over time as it was a line with a little loop through it for the needle, and eventually the line and the loop merged. And so that's how you get the modern shape of Q. But if you continue that line clear through the circle, you get Cyrillic the. So uh, the shape and sound for Q ended up for the k sound and the th sound. Interestingly enough. That's not what F is in English. That's a long story. Uh, R, I'm not actually sure about this R because I don't know if it's rhotic or a trill. And it seems it ended up as both. So this came unsurprisingly from Ra for head. It more or less kept its shape. In Phoenician, it had sort of a flag look to it, which eventually got flipped around and used for the modern R. It also had sort of a similar but open flipped R shape in Aramaic, as we have the uppercase R today. And the lowercase is just all of these are just kind of squiggles, but that's okay. That's okay. Then I have S from Sade. This one, no, that's a different S. Sorry, I have notes on here for letters that didn't make it, and that I got mixed up with it. Y'all are gonna have to give me a second because my notes are messy. Ah, yes. So Sadeh, that's why I got it mixed up. For field or land is modern S, and it started out kind of looking like a W. I'll be honest. And then that eventually got flipped on its side to make the modern S shape that we have in Latin, and then that ended up mostly unchanged, I think. It's been a long time since I've studied Latin. Uh, I have my own chart here, but I'm going to double check on this one. Yes, and yeah, I did have that W shape. Ended up as sigma, so turned over sideways for the Greeks, and then as the modern S, as we softened out into writing letters instead of carving them, is half the reason that some of these shapes changed as much as they did. T, mostly unchanged actually. The original version of it that we know of was kind of an X shape, which was then just turned on its side, and sort of stayed like that the whole time?
Just a heads up, I am removing that for a second. It'll
Okay.
be back in a moment if you want to continue or if you want to wait.
No, I will. I'm happy to carry on. Uh, yeah, T. I think T and O changed the least throughout here, and that's from Paul or Mark. I should probably read out what all of these are. Uh, the modern X. Lost. Can't actually find X on here. Where did that go?
Did he get cut off?
No, I can't find. I'm checking a couple of my charts. This was one of the ones I didn't have time to get to. So when we get to the end, how about we? You know what? I'll just do that now. Live. I thought I had notes for that and I didn't. So has a lot of phonetic usages. The speculated origin. I can't see the exact sound of that. It was chi from Greek, which evolved almost directly into it. It has a long series of descendants, including the multiplication sign, and it covers a frankly ridiculous amount of sounds in other languages, and has the sibling letter cha in Russian. And then my last one before I think we all tackle W, right? Is Z. I'm sorry there's so much like quiet period. So this one is also pretty interesting because a lot of these had the sounds changed a lot throughout time, except for those at the beginning of the sounds, I guess, sort of more towards the beginning of the alphabet. But Z as a sound did not change a lot. So it's from Zain or Zeit, which is interchangeably oxhide ingot or sword, and also had the influence from Th sound, like Eth in Icelandic. And it was shaped more or less like an I for a pretty considerable period of time. There, and I guess that shifted over time since there were two lines that had to be connected. It was just drawn with an angle to differentiate it from the other I. I'm not entirely sure if Z was present in Latin. I don't. Yeah, it was borrowed from the Greek zeta, most likely to represent the sound t, I believe, and eventually was brought back for Old English, and may have, in the case of Old English, evolved out of an S sound instead. All right, do we want to tackle W together?
We already have hit the 30-minute mark. So
Okay.
it is up to you guys, but I do think it'd be nice to at least go over the letters that didn't make it in.
Yes.
Okay. Do you
Whoever
want to open?
very smart.
I sent the link in for the Proto-Semitic script if you want to scroll down to the bottom and look at. Yeah, there we go.
Look at all the beautiful ones. There's
We've
so
got
many.
that towards the bottom, the one that only made it into Ugaritic Sabi or Calyx is a sound that is present dialectally in many languages, but is not officially in particularly many languages. It's the one towards the top.
This one?
No, the one on the end that's in cuneiform. Other
I
side.
have no clue what I'm looking for.
Right up and over from where your mouse is over there. So on the right side, the one that's
Right.
cuneiform. That one. There you go.
That one! We made it.
So there's one of our lost letters, and then we have I think it's Shemek into no Ksamek to C makes it ch sound. That one unfortunately got lost on the way into English. What else do we have? what is I don't know how to pronounce all of these. Is the trouble? We've got the one that ended up as theta in early Cyrillic. The series of O's with crosses or lines or whatever through them.
I'm just
And
scrolling up and down so everybody can see them, by the way.
there are a lot of really interesting letters in here, and I could do an entire presentation on Glagolitic through Old Cyrillic into Modern Cyrillic and the language reforms. Fun fact about Cyrillic, by the way, it is one of the only completely synthetic languages and the alphabet, or sorry, completely synthetic alphabets that was changed more or less entirely by consensus. The
Okay.
first modern official reform was done by Peter the Great's government. And then after that, a couple other letters were trimmed out under Lenin. They were done intentionally. This does not happen in a lot of modern alphabets. You get a couple times various Roman leaders decide they don't want loan letters from Greek anymore. And then we've got my old friend Wow. Look how many letters Wow turned into.
There's
Up there at the
many
top
here.
with F, W, V, Y, and U. Unfortunately, I think our presentation went a little long, but y'all can watch Jan Miseli's video. W.
It's an amazing video. Very, very entertaining. Ooh. But should we wrap it up here?
Yeah, probably.
I think so.
Thank you for watching our presentation, and Professor, if you made it down to the end of this video, thank you. I hope you enjoyed.
Yes,
Thank
thank you
you.
very, very much. We hope you learned, and we're sorry we didn't have as much
Oh,
light
wait,
comedic
hold
banter
on.
as maybe we would have wanted.
We have to
What's that?
talk about archaeology.
Oh,
So, within our citations, I can't believe we forgot this part. There are a series of archaeological sites that were covered where a lot of this information is from, and obviously letters themselves are very important archaeologically. But to explain where the alphabet as a whole began from, you have miners in the Canaan and Sinaitic area. That's I could pinpoint where it is on a map, but I don't have a map in front of me. Uh, they believed, at least most of them did not were not particularly capable of reading and writing, but some of them could. But they weren't fully fluent in I don't literate, I guess, in hieroglyphics, and so they made. How do I want to phrase this? They made sort of a rudimentary version of it of since each hieroglyph was represented by this first sound of the word it represented, that was turned into just the symbol for that specific sound, and that was written on the walls of some of the mines there in the caves, presumably to communicate from one shift of miners to the next if they didn't see each other when they went home and when they came in. And that is the guess to where the very first writing system, alphabetic writing system, came from.
I mean,
Does that sound
altogether,
good?
well, yeah, altogether as well. I mean, what we were kind of like, what I mentioned a little bit in the beginning is like, I mean, the whole archaeological implication of it is literally like, we're learning about cultural transforms and literally how everything affects, because linguistics are a big part of how we look at anthropology. I mean, we use it in everything, studying languages, studying past languages. And I mean, through this, you can kind of see like how external factors, like geographic movement, geographic areas, population change, what is available to these groups affects how language is transferred, written, and expressed. And I mean, I just think like you can see literally what the archaeological implication is. Like, there's nothing not archaeological, not anthropological about this.
There's also the interesting fact that when these were first written down, there was no specific way that any of these ideographs should go. There wasn't universally agreed read left to right. And some of these graphs that are written top to bottom, bottom to top, right to left to right, in spirals, either spiraling in or spiraling out. And I find that particularly interesting. Unfortunately, we didn't get the time to settle down into why most of the world settled on left to right, but food for thought for further research.
Indeed. So are we all good to end it here? I'm so sorry. I do not want my computer to blow up.
Yes.
Yeah, no, you're good.
Thank you once again, and bye, I guess. I don't know how we're
Bye.
supposed to end this.
Bye. Yes.